Breaking. King Charles just overruled Sadiq KHN in the most explosive constitutional showdown London has ever witnessed. And what happened next left the mayor absolutely furious and scrambling to save his political career. The king invoked powers nobody even knew still existed. Palace insiders are calling it nuclear. And the fallout could reshape British politics forever. If you want to see how this constitutional earthquake ends, hit that subscribe button right now, because what's about to unfold will shock you to your core. Here's what sparked this unprecedented crisis. At 9:47 a.m. yesterday morning, King Charles took specific action that shattered 50 years of political precedent. His private secretary delivered a formal letter to City Hall, and the contents were absolutely devastating. The king's words were measured, but unmistakable. London's current leadership direction contradicts the security and well-being of British citizens. But Sadiq Khan wasn't having any of it. The mayor wasn't backing down or issuing careful diplomatic responses. Khan fired back with a statement so confrontational that constitutional experts are still reeling. The temperature in British politics just went from simmer to absolute boiling point. At exactly 2:15 p.m, Khan held an emergency press conference outside City Hall. And his exact words were chilling. Standing before a cluster of microphones with his jaw clenched and his face flushed, he declared, "Nobody, and I mean nobody, tells the democratically elected mayor of London how to run this city. Not unelected advisors, not aristocrats clinging to medieval privileges, and certainly not the monarchy." The response was swift and devastating. Within hours, the hammer fell. Senior palace officials speaking on condition of anonymity described the king as privately appalled by Khan's insubordination. Sources inside Buckingham Palace describe an atmosphere of controlled fury unlike anything witnessed during Charles's reign. According to multiple senior courtiers who were present at emergency meetings throughout the day, the king's response will be measured, calculated, and absolutely crushing. The gloves are coming off. This isn't politics anymore. This is constitutional warfare. But wait, because there's another layer to this confrontation that makes it even more explosive. The specific issue that triggered the king's intervention involves London's handling of royal ceremonial routes and traditional processions. Khan's administration had proposed rerouting the annual Lord Mayor's Show away from historic pathways used since 1215. Claiming modern traffic concerns, but palace historians immediately recognized this wasn't about traffic management. This was about systematically dismantling the visible symbols of British monarchy in the capital city. The king's letter specifically referenced 3 separate occasions over the past 8 months where Khan's office blocked or delayed royal ceremonial permissions. One incident involved the Trooping the Colour rehearsal routes being restricted. Another involved denying palace requests for street closures during a Commonwealth reception. The third and most damaging involved KHN's office suggesting that royal processions should be scaled back to reflect modern democratic values. That phrase appeared in an internal memo that was somehow obtained by the Times. When palace officials read those words, sources say the reaction was immediate disbelief followed by cold determination. The king himself reportedly circled that phrase in red ink and wrote in the margin, "This stops now." Meanwhile, British veterans who served their country with honour and sacrifice are struggling to access basic healthcare services. Margaret Winters, a 72-year-old former army nurse from Cudden, was forced to wait 8 months for a hip replacement that left her unable to walk without excruciating pain. She served in Northern Ireland during the Troubles, tending to wounded soldiers under fire, and now she can barely climb the stairs in her own home. While veterans like Margaret suffer in silence, Khan's administration spent £2.3 million on diversity consultants last year alone. We're talking about luxury salaries for bureaucrats producing reports nobody reads, while heroes who defended this nation are left behind. The contrast is so stark, so morally offensive that even traditional Labour supporters are questioning their loyalty. Retired Colonel James Patterson told reporters, "We bled for Britain and now we're treated like second-class citizens while the mayor priorities everything except the people who actually built this country." His voice cracked with emotion during that interview, and the clip has been viewed over 1.8 million times in less than 24 hours. And it's not just veterans suffering under Khan's leadership. Pensioners across London, people who worked their entire lives and paid their taxes faithfully, are being hit with council tax increases that are crushing their fixed incomes. Dorothy Henderson, an 81-year-old widow from Barking, broke down in tears during a radio interview, explaining how she now skips meals to afford her heating bills. She and her late husband ran a corner shop for 40 years, serving their community, never asking for handouts. Now she's rationing food while Khan's office approves six-figure salaries for deputy mayors with vague job titles like Chief Community Engagement Officer. The cruelty of it is breathtaking. Working-class Londoners, the backbone of this city, are being squeezed dry while City Hall expands like a bureaucratic empire. Then something unprecedented happened that nobody saw coming. King Charles broke 70 years of royal protocol with a move so bold that constitutional scholars are calling it the most significant assertion of royal authority since the 1936 abdication crisis. At Wednesday's Privy Council meeting held in the ornate chambers of Buckingham Palace, His Majesty delivered what insiders describe as a masterclass in constitutional power. London belongs to all Britons, not to the political agendas of one man, the King declared with barely contained intensity. His voice steady, but his meaning unmistakable. The subtext was nuclear. Charles wasn't offering suggestions. He was drawing a line in the sand. Palace insiders revealed that the King personally drafted the rebuke himself, rejecting softer language proposed by advisers. One senior courtier, speaking anonymously to the Telegraph, confirmed what many suspected. His Majesty has had enough. The patience has run out. The optics are absolutely devastating for Sadiq Khan. When the Crown itself publicly rebukes your leadership, you don't just face a political problem. You face an existential crisis. Here's where it gets really interesting. The King didn't just issue a statement. He activated rarely used constitutional mechanisms that give the Crown oversight of London governance dating back to the 1.215 Magna Carta. Legal experts are still analysing the full implications, but early assessments suggest Charles has essentially placed KHN's office under royal scrutiny. Every major policy decision, every ceremonial ruling, every proposal affecting London's historic character must now be reviewed by palace-appointed constitutional advisers. Khan's power hasn't been stripped entirely, but it's been dramatically curtailed. And the brilliant strategy behind this move is that Charles didn't violate any democratic principles. He used existing constitutional frameworks that have always existed, but have simply been dormant for generations. The King outmaneuvered KHN using the very traditions KHN tried to diminish. The domino effect has been nothing short of catastrophic for Khan's political future. Immediately, markets reacted with brutal clarity. The pound sterling jumped 0.4% against the dollar within 90 minutes of the King's statement as investors interpreted royal intervention as a signal of coming political stability. Conservative MPs sensing blood in the water launched a coordinated assault across every media platform. Former Home Secretary Suella Braverman didn't hold back. The King has done what Parliament should have done years ago: stood up for ordinary Londoners. Within the Labour Party itself, fractures appeared almost instantly. Moderate Labour MPs terrified of being associated with KHN's constitutional confrontation began distancing themselves with carefully worded statements. #DefendTheKing trended globally for 6 consecutive hours, hitting number 1 in the UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Over 340,000 tweets in the first 4 hours alone. An organic tsunami of public support for the monarchy. Polls conducted by YouGov showed a staggering 68% of Londoners believe KHN overstepped his authority. Even more damaging, 52% of previous Labour voters said they're reconsidering their support. Protests erupted across London within 24 hours, with crowds gathering outside City Hall waving Union Jacks and chanting KHN must go. The images are politically toxic and they're being broadcast worldwide. But that's not even the worst part for KHN's crumbling political empire. International reaction has been swift and uniformly negative for the mayor. In Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, normally reluctant to comment on Commonwealth internal politics, praised the British monarchy's role in maintaining constitutional stability. In Australia, leaders from both major parties expressed support for King Charles's intervention. Even in New Zealand, where Republican sentiment has been growing, polls showed 61% of citizens approved of the King's actions. The message is clear across the Commonwealth. Challenging the Crown is political suicide. American political analysts appeared on CNN and Fox News discussing the clash, with most expressing bewilderment at KHN's strategy. Why would any politician pick a fight with an ACT institution that has survived for over 1,000 years? Asked one Georgetown University professor. Britain's reputation for stability, for constitutional continuity, for respecting tradition while embracing progress. That reputation is what made this nation respected worldwide. And Khan's reckless confrontation has damaged that reputation in ways that will take years to repair. Inside City Hall, The atmosphere has descended into what multiple sources describe as absolute panic and finger-pointing chaos. Ministers are openly arguing in hallways. Khan's deputy mayors are reportedly split into warring factions, with some privately urging him to apologize and others pushing him to double down. Deputy Mayor for Transport Seb Dance allegedly told colleagues in a heated WhatsApp exchange, "This is electoral suicide. We need damage control now or we're finished." Another senior advisor was overheard saying Khan looked haunted during crisis meetings, repeatedly checking his phone for poll numbers that keep getting worse by the hour. WhatsApp groups with names like Damage Limitation and Crisis Response Team are buzzing with desperate strategizing as Khan's inner circle realizes they've lost control of the narrative. The question isn't if Khan will face a leadership challenge anymore. Political observers note that Khan looked visibly shaken during a transport announcement yesterday, stumbling over prepared remarks and refusing to take questions about the royal intervention. Sources say he's barely sleeping, surviving on caffeine and crisis meetings that stretch past midnight. One insider described him as a man watching his legacy burn in real time. But here's the layer that could bring down KHN's entire political empire permanently. Leaked documents obtained by multiple Fleet Street publications show something absolutely explosive. According to internal City Hall memos dated just 3 weeks ago, KHN's office was privately warned by senior civil servants that confronting royal prerogatives would trigger constitutional mechanisms rarely invoked in modern governance. If these documents are real and if they show what legal experts claim they reveal, then KHN knew exactly what he was doing when he challenged the king. Think about what that means. This wasn't a spontaneous emotional response to royal interference. This was calculated political theatre, a deliberate attempt to manufacture a constitutional crisis for personal political gain. The optics of that would be absolutely devastating. Khan positioned himself as a victim of royal overreach while privately orchestrating the entire confrontation. Constitutional lawyer Professor David Hughes told the BBC, if the mayor received explicit warnings about constitutional boundaries and proceeded anyway, he's not defending democracy, he's abusing it for political purposes. And wait until you hear what else these leaked documents reveal. One memo from KHN's Chief of Staff, dated October 23, discusses leveraging progressive sentiment against traditional institutions as part of a broader strategy to position KHN as a national Labour figure ahead of the next general election. The memo explicitly mentions creating clear ideological separation from conservative monarchy-supporting positions. In other words, Khan's team planned to use the king as a political punching bag to rally progressive voters. They saw Charles as an easy target, an outdated symbol they could attack to energize their base. But they catastrophically miscalculated British public sentiment. They forgot that while Britons love to grumble about the royals, we close ranks fiercely when outsiders attack our institutions. Khan's team treated the monarchy like an American might treat a politician. Fair game for political combat. But this isn't America, this is Britain, and we don't elect our king. Meanwhile, Conservative leader Rishi Sunak is seizing the moment with surgical precision. While KHN flails and Labour scrambles, Sunak appeared at a packed town hall in Kingston-upon-Thames yesterday evening, speaking with the quiet confidence of a man who knows momentum has shifted decisively in his favour. While others attack our institutions and disrespect our constitutional monarchy, Sunak declared to thunderous applause, "We stand for stability, tradition, and the values that made Britain great. No mockery, no personal attacks, just steady leadership contrasted against chaos." The polls tell the story with brutal clarity. Conservatives have surged to 38% nationwide, their highest rating in 18 months. Labour has collapsed to 31%, losing ground in every demographic. In London specifically, Khan's approval rating has cratered from 47% to 34% in just 5 days. The fastest collapse in mayoral polling history. For the first time since Khan took office in 2016, Conservatives lead in Greater London voting intentions, 36% to 33%. This isn't just bad news for KHN. This is a political earthquake that could redraw the electoral map of Britain's capital city. Conservative strategists are already identifying vulnerable Labour seats across London that could flip in the next mayoral election. The next 72 hours are absolutely critical for everyone involved in this constitutional showdown. Khan faces a no-confidence motion within his own party, with senior Labour figures privately discussing whether to force him out before he drags down the entire organisation. The king must decide whether to press his advantage or return to traditional royal neutrality. Any further intervention risks accusations of political meddling. But silence now might look like weakness. Parliament returns Monday, and Conservative MPs are preparing emergency debates on mayoral powers and constitutional oversight. Britain is watching the most serious clash between the Crown and an elected official since the 1.970 seconds unfold in real time. The question is no longer whether Khan overstepped his authority. It's whether he's destroyed his political career in the process. This crisis will be studied for decades as the moment one politician forgot that in Britain some institutions remain untouchable. At its epicenter stands Sadiq Khan, who looks increasingly isolated, increasingly desperate and increasingly finished. Legal experts are now discussing whether Khan could face formal censure or even removal from office through ancient constitutional provisions that nobody has seriously considered in modern times. There are mechanisms, dusty clauses in centuries-old documents that give Parliament and the Crown joint authority to remove local officials who violate constitutional norms. Nobody seriously believed these provisions would ever be used in the 21st century. But Khan's confrontation has forced constitutional scholars to dig through archives to examine precedents from the 1600s and 1700s to determine what powers actually exist. To check a mayor who challenges royal authority. The mere fact that these discussions are happening shows how badly Khan miscalculated. He thought he was picking a fight with a ceremonial figurehead. Instead, he awakened constitutional mechanisms with real teeth. So here's the question that matters. Did Khan just commit career suicide by challenging the king? Or will he somehow survive this constitutional firestorm? Did King Charles just remind modern politicians that the crown still has teeth? And could this crisis actually strengthen the monarchy by proving it still has constitutional relevance in modern Britain? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. And if this story shocked you as much as it shocked us, share it with everyone who needs to see what's really happening in British politics right now. The mainstream media won't tell you the full truth about this constitutional crisis. But we will. Make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow we're revealing the leaked WhatsApp messages that show exactly how Khan's inner circle is plotting their next move. And trust me, what they're planning is even more shocking than what you've seen today. This constitutional showdown is far from over. And the next chapter could change London forever.